Narcissistic Mill persuaded her 11-year-old grandson to trap me in a dark closet as a prank. When my husband wouldn't intervene, I called the police. My husband's family and I have never seen eye to eye, especially with my mother-in-law, Monica. To give some context, Kyle, my husband, is one of 2 children in his family, and he has always been treated as the golden boy despite having an older sister. Monica, a full-fledged narcissist, would demand gifts on Kyle's or his sister's birthdays, insisting that they wouldn't exist without her. Kyle has shared with me that throughout his childhood, any achievement he had was twisted by her to be about her. When I first started dating Kyle and visiting his family, Monica was sweet and charming, but her behavior steadily worsened as our relationship became more serious. Things reached a breaking point when we decided to get married 3 years ago. Monica's interference made wedding planning a nightmare. To prevent our families from meddling, Kyle and I decided early on to pay for the wedding ourselves. Despite this, when Monica attempted to alter our wedding venue layout, I politely rejected her suggestions. She then complained to Kyle, who tried to mediate and find a compromise, but I firmly insisted that our decision was final. When it came to our wedding, I envisioned a casual, fun, and non-religious celebration with a mismatched bridal party in a loose color palette. I simply asked my MIL and the bridesmaids to choose dresses within this palette and to show me their selections before purchasing them so I could coordinate everything. My mother and the other bridesmaids complied, showing me their choices, and I didn't ask for any changes. However, my MIL never presented me with any options. Despite my repeated requests over the months leading up to the wedding, she always had an excuse. On the day of the wedding, my MIL arrived wearing an off-white dress that left everyone stunned. It was a medium-length dress with a transparent chiffon layer and a bolero. She seemed to revel in the moment, smirking at me as she saw my reaction. At that moment, I knew she would be a source of trouble for me forever. Overwhelmed with tears, I cried, and my husband immediately told her to either change or leave the venue. Phil didn't want to drive her home and began arguing with my husband. To avoid conflict, I reluctantly allowed her to stay in her inappropriate dress. The embarrassment was palpable as guests noticed her outfit and were visibly surprised. I chose to ignore her throughout the wedding, not speaking a word to her. My husband, aware of my distress, urged me to let it go, insisting that no matter who wore white, I was the bride. I was deeply hurt that he didn't grasp how wrong it was for his mother to wear a white dress to her son's wedding. I decided to forgive her, though she never apologized. Her narcissism didn't end there. Trying to get pregnant had been a challenging journey for us, especially after a miscarriage. When I discovered I was pregnant again, I was understandably nervous. Kyle, on the other hand, was ecstatic about becoming a dad. He was incredibly supportive, accompanying me to every doctor's appointment, reading parenting books with me, and even setting up a charming nursery for our baby. After reaching the critical milestone of the first trimester, we decided it was time to share our joyful news with our family. We wanted to be sure before announcing anything, so we invited our parents, close family, and friends to a lunch gathering. They arrived expecting a normal meal, but their expressions changed to joy and amazement when they noticed my growing belly. My mother, overcome with emotion, began to cry when she saw me and confirmed the pregnancy, understanding why we had kept the news private. She was thrilled at the prospect of becoming a grandmother. Monica, however, had a very different reaction. Instead of joining in the celebration, she was visibly upset that we had kept the pregnancy a secret. She felt excluded and accused me of intentionally keeping her in the dark. Despite my efforts to explain why we had kept the news private, Monica remained angry and refused to engage with me further. Her disapproval overshadowed what should have been a joyous family gathering. Throughout the evening, Monica ignored me completely and showed disrespect, not only towards me but also towards my mother, who had always been kind to her. She stayed glued to her phone while the rest of the family interacted, making her displeasure unmistakable. She openly expressed her frustration to everyone, lamenting that she had missed out on precious time with her grandchild before the baby was even born. Kyle and one of his brothers noticed her irritation. As the tension grew, I reached my limit and stepped out to gather myself. My mother, sensing my distress, came to comfort me until I felt calm enough to return. When the evening ended, Monica made a point of saying goodbye to me last. She had barely spoken more than a hi to me all day. Later, as Kyle walked them to the car, I could hear their heated argument clearly from the foyer. Monica used the moment to air her grievances about me, further escalating the already strained situation. Thankfully, by this point, all our guests had left, leaving just me, my parents, Kyle, and his parents. Monica was fuming, accusing Kyle of being blind to my supposed audacity in keeping the pregnancy a secret and implying that I didn't consider family. Kyle, remaining calm, explained that we had decided to wait until we were out of the danger zone before sharing the news. Hearing this, Monica erupted into a tirade. "Monica, This is our grandchild. I deserved to know from the very beginning. As your mother, you should have called me immediately with the news. Kyle, Mom, we just wanted to be cautious before sharing the news. Monica, cautious. I am your mother. You should have trusted me with this. I know this is all her fault. You let her dictate everything. Grow a pair. Kyle's face flushed with embarrassment as he looked at his mother, his expression a mix of misery and frustration. Tears streamed down my face, the sting of her harsh words leaving me both hurt and bewildered. I tried to speak up, but my mother whispered to me, urging me to stay silent. She warned that if I said anything, Monica would find another way to attack me. Monica's behavior was precisely as I suspected. She just wanted to pick a fight with me, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. I stayed silent. She insisted that Kyle needed to open his eyes and see the truth, accusing him of letting me control everything. She argued that, as his mother, she should have been the first to know about her son's child. Eventually, Kyle urged her to calm down and drove her away. Unfortunately, this was not the last time she behaved this way. Her tendency to blow things out of proportion and act entitled seemed endless. For instance, she tried to go behind my back to get our baby to call her Ma instead of Grandma, which infuriated me. She would beg me to babysit our child and then make a big show how much she helps us and how indispensable she is. When I experienced some health issues after pregnancy, she told me I needed to be a better mother to her grandchild and to get over myself. These incidents, among many others, have strained my relationship with my NIL. Despite everything, I continue to tolerate her for the sake of my husband. Recently, my NIL and Phil moved into a new home and have been inviting us to visit. Despite their persistence, our busy schedule kept us from making it over. Kyle suggested I go with our daughter, Debbie, but I was hesitant. He convinced me to go so his mother would stop nagging him about it. Reluctantly, I agreed. On a sunny Friday afternoon, after dropping Debbie off at a friend's birthday party and arranging for my mother to pick her up, I headed to check out my in-laws' new place. The property was vast, and it seemed my father-in-law had invested a lot for his retirement. The house combined modern and classic styles, and the yard was beautifully landscaped with lush green plants and fragrant flowers. When I arrived and rang the doorbell, my mother-in-law opened the door, perhaps expecting Kyle. She seemed excited initially but looked confused when she saw it was just me. She asked where Kyle and Debbie were. I explained that Kyle had an appointment and Debbie was at a birthday party. This visibly upset her, and she began to grumble about how selfish we were for not finding time to visit her. I'd awkwardly tried to steer the conversation by saying I was there and would love to see her new place. She forced a sad smile and invited me inside. The interior of the house was just as extravagant. The entrance of their new home had soaring ceilings and everything was tastefully decorated. My sister-in-law, Sil, Haley, and her 11-year-old son, Jake, were also there. I greeted them warmly. Sil, much like her mother, had never seemed particularly fond of me. Whether it was a personal issue or just an attempt to appease her mother, she rarely interacted with me. My Niall mentioned that Phil was out with friends, so she had invited Haley and her son over to spend some time with them. I nodded, trying to be polite, and started a conversation with Thasile's son, asking about his school. As we talked about his school, Nil abruptly shifted the topic to her recent clothing purchases. She mentioned she had hoped I could offer some advice on her new wardrobe. This surprised me as she had never asked for my opinion before. I tried to mask my surprise and replied, "Oh, that's nice. I'd be happy to help." It felt odd given our past interactions, but I decided to look on the bright side and see it as a chance to bond over something simple like fashion. She seemed pleased with my response and led me to what she proudly called her pride and joy, the newly built walk-in closet. As we approached the impressive display of clothes, shoes, and accessories, I couldn't help but admire the lavish collection my Nanelle had amassed. While I was taking in the outfits, she eagerly showed me different pieces, asking for my opinion on colors, styles, and accessories. It was a bit surreal given our troubled history, but I tried to be helpful and offer thoughtful suggestions. My Nanelle then encouraged me to browse through her closet and said she would be right back. I nodded and began examining her new clothes when I heard the patter of feet behind me. Before I could turn around, Thasile's son, Jake, burst into the room with mischievous laughter, giving me a shove that sent me stumbling into the closet. He quickly locked the door behind me. I hit the floor face first, my head and teeth itching from the impact. The initial shock was soon replaced by a sense of confinement and panic as I realized Jake had turned off the light switch, leaving me in total darkness. I felt claustrophobic, shocked, and terrified. I started banging on the closet door, desperately calling out for Manael and Sael. My pleas seemed to either go unheard or were deliberately ignored. I fumbled for my phone, quickly switching on the flashlight. Anxiety gnawed at me as I noticed my battery was dwindling, making me fear that my phone might die before I could escape the dark closet. I've always had an irrational fear of darkness, stemming from a childhood incident where I accidentally locked myself in my grandmother's closet while playing hide and seek. My grandmother, who was hard of hearing, took an excruciating hour to find me, stuck and screaming. That terrifying moment left a lasting fear of darkness that resurfaced whenever I found myself in such a situation. I kept trying to call out to Manael and Sael, but my calls went unanswered, and I felt increasingly isolated. I could hear their loud laughter downstairs, adding to my confusion and frustration. In a last-ditch effort, I dialed my husband's number, desperation evident in my voice. After a few rings, he answered casually. I explained the dire situation to Kyle. Kyle, thank goodness you picked up. Something terrible has happened, and I need your help. Kyle, seemingly unfazed, asked what was going on. I recounted the incident. Your nephew just pushed me and locked me inside the closet at your mom's place. He turned off the lights. I've been banging on the door, but no one has come to help me. You know how terrified I am of dark spaces. Kyle's response was less sympathetic. Are you seriously calling me in the middle of work for this? This isn't even an emergency. Just call my mother who is inside the house instead of calling me. Frustrated, I explained that I had already called his mother and sister several times, but they weren't picking up. I told him my phone's battery was low to begin with, and using the flashlight was draining it further. I begged him to come over and help me, reminding him how scared I was of the dark, a fear I had talked to him about at length. Kyle, unmoved, replied, locked in a closet. Seriously? No, I can't come over right now. I'm busy. Find someone else to help you. To my dismay, he nonchalantly dismissed my pleas and abruptly ended the call. I was stunned by Kyle's reaction. The growing panic within me drove me to keep banging on the closet door, desperately calling Amiel and Sael, but their phones remained stubbornly silent. Feeling trapped and helpless, I decided to call my father-in-law, Phil, since he was the only person left I could turn to. I knew he had been out with his friends, but I had no one else. I held my breath as the phone rang, hoping he would pick up. He did, and I nervously explained the situation, telling him that Jake had locked me in the closet. Phil immediately assured me he would come home as quickly as possible and was shocked that Nael and Sael hadn't heard me all this time. After what felt like an eternity, I heard voices outside. I recognized Phil's voice yelling and directing someone to unlock the closet door. My anxiety began to subside as I realized help was finally on the way. The door creaked open, and I squinted against the sudden light. Phil stood there, his face a mix of concern and frustration. I stepped out of the closet, a bit disoriented but immensely relieved. Phil asked Anael why I was locked in her closet, and she responded with a faint air of innocence. I recounted the incident to everyone, detailing how Jake had pushed me into the closet and locked it. However, both Anael and Sael scoffed at my words, dismissing them entirely. They insisted that Jake would never do something like that. Frustrated and angry, I questioned why they hadn't come to check on me or responded to my banging on the door. They claimed they were in the backyard, with Anael showing Haley and Jake her new rose garden. Jake was peeking from the door, so I directed my anger at him, asking why he had locked me inside. Sael interrupted, insisting that her son would never do such a thing and suggesting that I must have closed the door myself, and the key must have fallen out. Their blatant lies left me beside myself with frustration and disbelief, especially since it didn't explain how the lights were turned off. Phil tried to calm me down, but I knew that regardless of what I said, Anael and Sael would continue to defend each other. Defeated and hurt, I returned home. On my way, I called my mother, apologizing that I couldn't pick Debbie up for the night and that she might have to stay over at their place. I was trembling with shock, and my mother sensed something was wrong, but I didn't have the energy to explain what had happened. When I got home, I waited for Kyle to return so I could confront him about what his family had done. To my disbelief, when I recounted the incident to him during dinner, he berated me for overreacting and accused me of being childish. He insisted that it was a ridiculous accusation to make against his family. He refused to believe that his nephew could have locked me in the closet, and that his mother and sister had deliberately ignored my cries for help. He justified their actions, saying he wasn't at my beck and call and that I needed to be more understanding, gaslighting me in the process. I started to doubt myself. In an attempt to avoid further conflict, I chose not to argue with him any longer. I retreated to bed, feeling profoundly lonely and struggling to understand what had happened. The weight of the incident pressed heavily on my chest, and a sense of being dismissed and misunderstood by my husband lingered. I knew that what had happened wasn't just a prank. It was intentional, calculated, and deeply humiliating, especially since everyone knew I was afraid of the dark. The following day, while I was still grappling with the emotional aftermath of the previous day's ordeal, I received a TikTok link from my cousin, asking if the video featured me. I opened the link, horrified to see that my nephew Jake had recorded the entire incident and posted it shamelessly for his followers. He was clearly explaining to his audience how he had wanted to prank me, and locking me in the dark closet was his perfect plan. He had hidden the camera in a corner and then rushed to push me inside. My blood boiled with anger as I watched him laugh, the audacity of his actions infuriating me. I shared the video in our family chat, demanding an apology from everyone now that I had proof. I also contacted SIL, telling her that she needed to get Jake to delete the video immediately. Instead of recognizing the severity of the situation, MIL brushed it off, telling me it was really funny to watch. She claimed that she hadn't seen anything more hilarious and insisted that boys will be boys. SIL joined in, insisting that I shouldn't be bothered by the video and should just let it go, claiming that Jake had only played a harmless prank on me. I warned them that if Jake didn't remove the video, I would take legal action. MIL responded by saying I was overreacting and needed to chill out and integrate more with the family. Frustrated by their lack of empathy, I decided to take matters into my own hands to teach them a lesson. I called the police and provided them with the evidence of the incident. Recognizing the seriousness of the situation, they agreed to visit SIL to question her about why her 11-year-old had a TikTok account and was posting prank videos involving locking people in closets. Later, SIL called me, furious, asking if I seriously had the audacity to file a complaint against her. I confirmed that I had and that I was prepared to take this to court. She began yelling at me, but I quickly informed her that I was recording the conversation and would share it with my lawyer. She fell silent abruptly. I decided to take matters into my own hands and teach them a lesson. I called the police and provided them with the evidence of the incident. Recognizing the seriousness of the situation, they agreed to visit SIL to question her about why her 11-year-old had a TikTok account and was posting videos of pranks involving locking people in closets. Later, SIL called me, furious, demanding to know if I seriously filed a complaint against her. I confirmed that I had and made it clear that I was prepared to take this to court. She began yelling, but I quickly told her I was recording the conversation and would share it with my lawyer. She fell silent immediately. Update 1. In just a few hours, I received thousands of comments, and I'm grateful to see that most people understand why I decided to involve the police. My in-laws have been calling me, asking me to withdraw my statement to the police. No official case has been filed yet, as my nephew is still a child, so the police are investigating to determine the appropriate course of action. My husband, who had no idea about the situation, exploded when he got home from work. He had tried calling me throughout the day, but I was busy dealing with the police. When he returned, I knew we were going to have a serious conversation. Kyle is convinced that my actions have destroyed the family and insists that I'm overreacting to what he considers a harmless prank. He believes that Jake is just a child and shouldn't be punished for this. I've spoken with my parents and sister about the incident. They are aware of my fear of dark spaces and are shocked that no one came to rescue me, especially that Kyle isn't standing up for me. My dad had a stern talk with Kyle, emphasizing that if I had called for help while trapped in the dark closet, it was his responsibility to either come to my aid or immediately contact his parents to get me out. His failure to do either has deeply troubled me and my family. Thanks to the support and comments from everyone, I now see that my husband and his family's dismissive behavior has been ongoing, and I've been blind to it. I will keep you updated on any further developments. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update, and there has been a significant development. Vic, Syl's husband, who had been out of town, recently returned and learned about the incident with me and Jake. He was furious and demanded that Jake immediately remove the video and personally apologize to me. When Syl tried to defend Jake's actions, Vic threatened to kick him out if he ever disrespected others like that again. He shared this with me during a visit. I agreed to meet with him, hoping to get to the bottom of the incident. Vic came to our place with Jake, who looked visibly upset, as if he had been scolded thoroughly. Vic stared at him sternly, and Jake quickly began to apologize as soon as we sat down. He admitted to pushing me into the closet, but claimed it wasn't entirely his fault. Confused, I listened closely, as did Vic. Jake revealed that he had shown Mill several prank videos from his TikTok account, and she suggested that he try them out on someone in real life. Although Jake was hesitant, Mill convinced him that because I was not technically family, it would be okay to prank me without feeling guilty. I was stunned by what I heard. Vic questioned Jake, worried that he might be trying to evade responsibility with such a serious accusation. But Jake began to cry, and he offered to show us the conversation on his phone where he and Mill had discussed the prank. He pulled up the chats, and I was absolutely horrified and disgusted. The idea that someone her age could incite a child to such behavior simply because she disliked me was truly appalling. I quickly saved the screenshots to my phone and firmly told Jake that his actions were completely wrong, urging him not to follow Mill's suggestions again. He nodded, looking truly remorseful. Vic, equally shocked, expressed his disgust and reconsidered allowing his child to be around my mother-in-law. I nodded in agreement as he expressed his regret for not being there to prevent Jake's actions that day. Vic urged me to reconsider pressing charges and to retract my statement with the police now that Jake had admitted the truth. He was clearly worried about the potential consequences for his son's future. I told them that I would discuss the matter with my lawyer and the police, stipulating that Jake must never upload the video again or keep a copy. Jake assured me that he had deleted the video and no longer had any copies. Since my conversation with Vic and Jake, I have been deeply reconsidering my relationship with Mill. It has become abundantly clear that she orchestrated the whole incident, using a child to carry out her plan so she could avoid direct blame. Given how much she already dislikes me, I can't allow myself to be around her anymore. I fear what other harm she might do if I continue to be in her orbit. Update 3. Hello everyone. It's been 4 months since my last update. I've moved out of my husband's house and am now staying with my parents. As I previously shared, Mill was behind the entire ordeal. When I confronted her with the evidence, she initially refused to admit any wrongdoing. She even tried to claim that Jake must have manipulated the screenshots or photoshopped them. Her lies crumbled once I threatened to take legal action. Reluctantly, she admitted that she had planned the prank with Jake, and she saw my solo visit as the perfect opportunity to execute it. She confessed that Sil was in on it as well and that they had enjoyed hearing me scream for help. She begged me not to pursue the matter further, promising she would never do such a thing again. Fortunately, I had recorded our entire conversation with Mill. I ended the call and immediately shared the voice recording in our family group chat so everyone could hear her admissions. I sent a text to Sil, expressing my disappointment and hoping that her son would grow up to be a better person than she is. As for my husband, our relationship has deteriorated further with each passing day. Despite having the screenshots and the voice recording of his mother's confession, he never apologized for his family's actions. Seeing my family's support helped me realize that I wasn't overreacting. What happened to me was indeed a serious matter. While I chose not to pursue legal action, I couldn't bring myself to forgive or forget what they had done. There was no turning back after this. My husband's unwavering support for his family's actions made it clear that there was nothing left to salvage in our marriage. Despite my efforts to save it, when your partner sides with his mother over your feelings and well-being, you start to realize that you deserve so much more. I decided to move out to begin the divorce proceedings. He wasn't surprised and didn't resist when I told him I wanted a divorce. I won't sugarcoat it, this has been incredibly tough. I truly loved him and had envisioned a future together, but these past few months have opened my eyes to the reality that I need to prioritize my own well-being. I am grateful to everyone in the comments and my family for helping me see the truth about my husband and his family. I deserve to put myself first and to find a life where I am respected and valued.